These are critical decisions, Mr. Chakravarty, and there has to be constant dialogue and engagement between what development can do for people and what their own social and cultural lives mean to them.
The optimum means comes from dialogue and negotiations. You have to spend, instead of spending like Tehri Dam, instead of spending what, 60 years trying to solve technical problems. If you had spent 1/10 of that on talking to the people, asking what they want, there was no knowledge of sociology or social anthropology or things like that in India in the 1960s. There was, and quite a lot of it. How was it used? A farmer knows when it's going to rain, when it's not going to rain. Knows when a big wind is coming, when a big wind is not coming. Knowledge that has come down to him over the centuries. Just because you have got an electronic weather surveillance system, don't decry that knowledge which comes from the soil.
Namaste and welcome to a new episode of Sangam Talks. This time we have a guest, Mr. Bappaditya Chakravarty with us. And we are going to be in conversation with him on many things other than his two very, very interesting books, The Two Wanderers and Swordplay, which I have here. But since Mr. Bappaditya Chakravarty has worked in many spheres and has worn many hats, he's been an academic, he's been a professional, he's worked with the World Bank, we are going to begin asking him with how his journey traversed and took him from a professional career to a writing career. Mr. Bappaditya, welcome to the show.
Thank you, and good morning to you and good morning to your audience. You see, sometimes your tracks are guided, you know by who, don't know by who, and sometimes your tracks are volitional, that you decide to take them yourself. In my case, I had decided when I was working as a faculty of IIM Calcutta, long way back. I worked there for 9 years. There is a reason for it. Rusi Modi once said that anybody who teaches for more than 10 years is an ass. So I quit in my 9th year. Having said that, I decided that what I was teaching was too theoretical. And I needed to have more practical experience of my own before I should start to teach what should be done. Because at that time, and I suppose today also, MBA students have to unlearn most of what they learn in the college or the institute. So unless I had unlearned some of the things that I had learned, I would not be able to convey that sense of practicality to the students. So I left academics. I joined the Port of Goa as a director planning. Then went on from there back to academics. I was head of a management institution, this IIMT Ghaziabad. And then from there again went back into practice, joining Tehri Dam, came back. Finally, my last semi-academic stint, I think we can call it, was with the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India as a director. And there I had both sides. We were doing consulting and we were also engaging in continuing professional education. That was my department. Consulting was also my department. And from there I shifted full-time to consulting with the bank. Of course, I'd done consulting before. So some of this can be seen as a natural progression. Some of this was volitional, as I said, academics to practice of management, back to academics, back to practice of management, so on and so on. But which sphere, which direction, that track seemed to have been laid out.
Okay. So you have written this very fantastic book, The Two Wanderers. Now I see it as a movement of worldviews. A Viking travels from Scandinavia to Tibet, and then he has these conversations with monks. He has numerous experiences also. So set up in the background of the Silk Roads, why did you decide to bring the Viking to Tibet?
There is a trivial answer and there is a serious answer.
Okay, let's have both.
The trivial answer is my wife is Danish and I'm an Indian. So this was a natural joining of the two things. And in fact, it was her idea that she wanted to say, why don't you write a book involving a Viking and involving an Indian? So that was the kernel. But the important thing, this more serious thing, is that the two were worlds apart, in a sense, in a civilizational sense, if I can call it. And yet, I wanted to show that there is an equal amount of merit. There is an equal amount of merit in considering other civilizations as entities of their own, as cultural bases of their own, unanswered questions of their own, which are really the questions of humankind. In India, we have approached those questions from our point of view. We have had an advantage of many thousands of years of answering such questions in a spiritual way, in other ways. Others have not had that. But they have arrived at their own answers in their own way. And that the fundamental questions remain the same, whether in India or in other civilizations. That is what I have tried to show.
But the worldviews are, they come from cultures, they come from your beliefs. A lot of them come from language as well. So how does the Vikings' interaction with the Lama come out in the book?
Well, it comes out because of the personal experiences of Snorri the Viking. He has an initial experience of saving a woman from the rapists. Then he has another experience where he questions himself. He wins a duel with a rogue, and then he starts asking himself this question: why? What does it give me? And he doesn't find an answer, because in his world there are no answers. That is what they're trained to do, that is what they're culturally conditioned to do, and that is what they do. I have given some poems which shows the kind of thirstiness of the Vikings. At the same time, he also talks about his own brother, who is an agriculturist, and the females in the family. Because basically what used to happen is that the men would go out a Viking and the women would take care of the farm and everything. So the women developed an identity of their own and became very strong in that society. I have not exploited that one because this is not a Viking book as such. This is a book of individuals. But I had to bring that in, and repeatedly, to show how trying to answer those questions can bring a man close to a very difficult phase of self-examination. And this connects up with the end of the book, where Shivarma's fiancé is killed. As he, and naturally he thinks it's because of his fault. And if it is because of his fault, then he has to atone for it only he does not know how to atone for it. He thinks that he had grown too confident of himself, grown too big for his boots, in his own words, and therefore he had to go back and re-examine the whole thing. It's the same issue that Snow had faced early in the book, only in a different form, and it shows that if you do not resolve a question properly, it will keep on popping up. And the grief that he experiences, he cannot deal with it.
Right.
You see, Tagore once wrote a small piece when he was old. And he said, I was walking down the street and somebody tapped me on the shoulder. And I said, because I couldn't see a shadow. So I said, who are you? And he said, don't you recognize me? I am your grief. Tagore had to face a number of deaths in his early years. I am your grief. You thought you had left me behind, but you didn't. Now that you've grown old, look at me on the face and then try to see my actual looks, my shape.
Okay.
So, grief is something that you need to deal with.
Yes.
And this is what Sri Varma realizes, that he cannot just sit down and moon over a death. And because his own life is worth more than that. His own task is worth more than that.
So does he find answers?
That is what he says in the very, very last chapter, and I'd rather not reveal it, although it's part of a philosophy, it's part of a Buddhist philosophy. That, you see, every time you utter a word, or think of a word, it gives rise to a phrase in your mind. And the phrases form sentences, and they are like temple bells. A small tinkle leading to a larger one, leading to a larger one.
Like a ripple.
And only when they all sing in harmony, all the bells, they toll in harmony, that you can make out the whole pattern, the whole music, and so forth. This is also certainly, in a sense, the essence of what has been told and discussed many times in our own scriptures.
That's true.
In different words. And one of the biggest tasks I faced writing this book was to condense the philosophy, the various philosophies, into sentences that are understandable and that do not show my love for what I'm saying, or my love of my own knowledge, because I think many books suffer from it.
All right.
You will pardon me.
Okay.
That it is not an expression of my scholarship, but it is an expression of what I feel and how I tell a story.
Okay. So the book Swordplay that you brought out is very, very different from the Two Wanderers. So this one was like a movement of worldviews. This one is about strategy, movement of ideas. So tell us about this also, and about the protagonist, Brigadier Paramjot Singh.
You see, I will say and admit that the germ of Paramjot Singh and his troop is borrowed unashamedly from Jack Higgins, where he has got this Brigadier Ferguson and his team. But they operate much more openly. And here, they operate secretively. The original idea came from a Department of Defense in India, a very shadowy kind of group, which was then ostensibly taken down
Okay.
I was told that it's not really taken down. It was called the Technical Services Department, the TSD. The most difficult assignments would be given to them, and nobody knew who they were,
Right.
except the top man, like in this case.
Okay.
So this sort of coincided, this Brigadier Ferguson thing and the TSD and all that. So I decided to put that in. But as to why I wrote it was, and I will tell you one thing about this book, that I debated with myself for a long time, almost a whole year before I started writing it. The reason is that what I have discussed in this book can actually be stolen by terrorists. And I have said something about it somewhere, maybe in the book, in the introduction, something. That in any case, it should be brought to the knowledge of the public. And the third part was that it is actually fairly easy to steal a nuclear bomb, a suitcase bomb.
Can you quote something from the book, Mr. Chakravarty, and tell us how you want to elaborate on it? Maybe the instance from Char Dham Yatra.
The how they arrive at the thing. That you see, what they find is they intercept communications and they find some code words, and from the code words they interpret that this is happening, and that there is some discussion about a nuclear thingy.
Right.
On the other hand, there is this motorcade which is being planned,
Right.
and again under the guise of an all religion thingy, which would be very acceptable in today's context.
Very inclusive.
Yes, apparently. That's the key word. Apparently. If you don't look inside too much. And I'm sorry, but there are many people, they exist, whether I like them or whether I like it or not, who will be saying, look at what is happening. This carcade is or bike yatra, whatever you call it, is a cover-up. At the end of it, it turns out that the whole thing is a double feint. It's not the real route of the missile. It's not got much to do with it.
Right.
This is how a whole country can be led astray if it is properly orchestrated. And here is where the strategy also comes in. The opponent's strategy of hiding their strength and your own strategy of not revealing what you have learned until the last moment when it will be most effective. That part of the strategy. And I had to put it down once I knew from my Tehri experience that this is possible.
So talking about Tehri, Mr. Chakravarty, you were posted there, you have worked amongst the people who were displaced by the submersion of the villages in the Tehri district. This was in late 1990s. So early in the 1990s. What has been your experience of the displacement, the rehabilitation of people, the reasons why it was done, and how it was managed politically, socially, emotionally?
When I joined them, I was told my task was to rehabilitate 1.2 million people, 12 lakhs, from 500 odd villages and the Tehri town itself. And then I was supposed to supervise the construction of the new Tehri town, so the initial stages. There I found, as you said, the attachment to the land, the attachment to one's neighbors, attachment with one's neighbors, and so forth, was very strong. At the same time, there was greed. And the greed I experienced in several ways, incidents. And then I saw the reverse of the greed also. I can give you an example if you want. You see, I'll give you two examples, one of greed and one of the other. The very first day that I joined, one of my executive engineers comes to me and says, "Sir, we are going to demolish these shacks near the old bus stand of Tehri." So we had already issued a notice earlier. I will put a notice today also.
This is in the areas that were to be submerged?
Yeah, Tehri town, old Tehri bus stand.
Right.
And so you can come and see how we do these things. Okay, let's go. I still remember it was dusk, and in the hills, you come from, that it's suddenly evening. There is dusk hardly lasts half an hour, not even that. They arrived there at dusk, and this whole place, the road leading to the bus stand, it had street lights, one maybe 30, 40 meters away, and small bulbs burning. They stopped before a shack, sort of tin shack covered with the usual juggi kind of thing. And this executive engineer, name was Brahmdutt, I still remember, he went and pasted a sheet on the door.
A notice.
Notice saying, 24 घंटे में खाली कर दो, vacate in 24 hours, etc., etc. And then knocked on the door. A woman came out with a child which was around 6 years, and a boy, and a girl only slightly smaller, maybe 5 or whatever it is. And there was also an assistant engineer who went into his PL. We have given you notice, you have to vacate, tomorrow we'll bring the dozers in, etc., etc. I'm sorry, but I have to say this in Hindi.
Please do.
I could see the woman's face. I still cannot recall that incident without getting emotional myself. She didn't say a word. Tears were running down her face. And the boy said, "माँ, हम कहाँ जाएंगे? हमारा तो और कोई घर नहीं है." And of course, in a childish lisp. And the girl, even younger, said, "माँ, यहाँ तो बहुत ठंड है, हम तो मर जाएंगे। इन लोगों को समझाओ ना कि हमारा कोई घर नहीं है." I tell you, I stood there, and that ambience, the semi-darkness, the dim lights, the woman with tears coming down her face, and the children saying these things, I felt, I felt like an ogre. And I told myself, is any development worth the tears in those tears in the woman's eyes? And I didn't have an answer. This is the other side. And the greed, now I give you an example. There is always a, what do you call it? I'm sorry, but I do get emotional. There is a time for meeting the public. And one day, 2 boys turn up and they say, "Saab, humko 2 plots chahiye. We need 2 plots."
In lieu of the house that they were vacating.
In lieu of the agricultural plot land that they had. So I said, "Well, okay, I don't know you. Let me find out." My officer on special duty used to be one Brigadier Sharma, ex-ordnance, I think. So I called him and I said, Brigadier, these are the two boys who are here. And what are these are the names. So Brigadier comes with his files and says, sir, they cannot be given two plots because their father is alive. I explained to the boys, तुम्हें नहीं मिल सकता, तुम्हारा तो बाप जिंदा है, तो एक ही प्लॉट मिलेगा, दो कैसे मिल जाएगा? नहीं साहब ये है वो है, and then they go. After about 6-7 months, no, about 4 months, they turned up again and said, हमें पहचानते हैं? भाई, every day hundreds of people come, how would I know you? नहीं हम आपके पास आए थे, we had two brothers, we wanted two plots. Then I recalled that. So, yes. तुम्हारा तो बाप जिंदा है?
अब नहीं है.
The answer was, अरे साहब, big smile, बुड्ढा बह गया. Oh, बह गया? You see, I had quasi-judiciary powers. So I went to my PS's office and called the Thana, local Thana, and called the inspector. I said, Inspector साहब, आइए, इन दोनों को ले जाइए. And the police station was nearby. He came with his constables, took these guys, and while he was going, I told the inspector aside, I said, जाके जरा third degree दीजिए तो. He said, क्या ground है? Why should I do it? So I said, ये बात है. I told him, ठीक है. Next day, inspector comes. I said, साहब हिरासत में ले लिया है, arrested them. क्या हुआ? They took their father to that bridge near Gaumukh. You know, there is a small ice bridge. This is greed.
On the one hand, we are thinking about, the emotional trauma that those who were displaced have suffered. The loss of sense of place, the loss of sense of space. And on the other hand, we have these people as well.
I have had so many cases there, people are saying, मेरे घर से मंदिर 15 कदम है. न्यू टेहरी में मेरे घर से मंदिर 15 कदम रहेगा. Shall I be, and so on and so forth. Right? I don't want to get into too many stories. This is not that. But that is what it is. And I'm speaking from my experience. You see, Tehri Dam was started in 1955 and finally got finished in the 21st century, more or less. The day that we diverted the Bhagirathi, the very senior engineer who had worked with BHEL earlier, etc., he looked at the flow of the river and said, we didn't need to build this dam. I could make 100 megawatts out of this only. And that's a huge thing. That's a huge thing. There was no need to build such a huge dam if it had been built on time. The dam could have been smaller. In fact, just by the diversion of the river, as I said, what have you added? 200 megawatts? And they could have built the Kosepur Dam slightly bigger and made, as it is, it's a gravity.
But why was the construction of the Tehri Dam delayed? Government policies?
Political, this thing. And imagine the thousands of crores of rupees that would have been saved.
And the trauma that the people suffered.
Yes.
Which could have been entirely prevented.
Entirely prevented. And there would have been no need whatsoever to pay out all these thousands and thousands of crores in rehabilitation money.
So much state fund, so much funds from the center gone waste.
And at that time it used to be under the UP government, the whole thing. And the dilly-dallying, change of state governments, this, that, nobody wants to take a decision.
Mr. Chakravarty, I want to ask you a question here. You said many of the management concepts that you were teaching, you said were not really applicable in real life. So does this apply to the ideas of development as well?
Yes, most certainly. Because, you see, what people have done is they have, the management experts, is that they have labeled everything as if a factor like culture can be chopped up into pieces and put in labeled boxes. It cannot be. You see, the first time I went to Liberia, we were on an urban waste management thing. We tried to teach people what to do. I mean, the bank had programs. And what do you do with the people who think that waste is waste? So body waste is also waste, and throw it in the wheelbarrow. And so put it in the plastic bag and throw it in the wheelbarrow. Now what do you do with it? Then don't call it waste. Now the whole idea of semantic differentials is only illustrated. But until you come back with it, come back to real life and see it. In Afghanistan, where I worked for quite a number of years, an aid agency, let me not name it, they built a hospital. And to encourage people to go to the hospital, they printed a leaflet, because people can't read, they made it in pictures. Patient, hospital, patient goes to hospital, comes out walking. Fine. Completely forgetting that Dari is written from right to left. So, you see, just
Okay, it was a clear-cut case of, cultural disconnect. No sensitivity to the culture.
exactly, no sensitivity and no wish to understand. This is what comes out of a management book. That if people cannot read, okay, so this arrow, this. But the point is, but they will read from here to here.
That's true.
And you don't bother to understand the real culture behind it. That they come from a different world.
True. And maybe development means a different thing to them than it does to the people who are planning to implement it.
Exactly. For this is a kind of a continuous argument I have with my wife, that to me development means development to the extent that people are satisfied with their own current way of life. Current way of life is short of, let's say, food, shelter, blah. Just give them. Just make sure they have it. It is not necessary to understand development in terms of a color TV or a washing machine.
But then these are the aspirations that a person has developed by looking at other people. We are so well connected now in the globalized world. We come to know that other people have these facilities.
Yes, they do.
So their definition of development has also changed.
Yes, but have you kept track of how it has changed? That is the whole issue. You see, I started consulting, you will call me a dinosaur, way back. Let's just put it that way. And it was a small assignment in Odisha. We went there for some other purpose, and the Rural Development Department said, you see, there is this village, 2-3 villages together. We have dug wells. We have provided them with buckets and rope, but they will not use. Every time we provide them with a bucket and a rope, it got stolen. So we have not been able to understand why this is happening. And at the end of the day, they should know, and they should understand what is what. We went there, looked at the thing. You know what I found? That this hole business of getting water for the house is a chance for the young girls to go down to the riverside and a chance for the young Romeos also to follow them. Now, if you only go to the center of the village, your chance of romance vanishes. So, the bucket also vanishes.
All right.
That's I've seen this in many places. I've seen this in Gujarat, where this dam was constructed, and nobody used the water from the dam. So went down to Ganga river, and why doesn't anybody use water? The farmers don't use water, etc. So went all the way from IIM Calcutta. They don't buy water because of a very simple reason, that there is a monsoon area and the grass for the cattle, it grows by itself. All the villagers do is cut the grass and sell it to the Maharashtrian dairy farmers.
Okay.
So if that is the case, why the hell should they buy water, plant seeds and grow this thing? These things are not even seen.
Yeah.
And that is where you really learn the meaning of culture and the meaning of understanding people's social behavior, social context.
And also the basic definition of a problem.
You have to identify the problem. If I start on that, it will take a whole day. So let's just stop there and say that there is a lot of difference. And cultures also give rise to microcultures within the organization, within the factory, on the shop floor, which is what management students don't do. And that is what you have to unlearn. That you should not label things, you should not label people. And it is a difficult lesson to learn. Not everything is explainable by statistics.
There's so much learning to be done on ground, where you actually go and work among the people.
Yes.
You learn from them as well.
People are not statistics.
That's true. Now, how did your real life experiences and insights contribute to this writing?
Oh, this was a great debate at one point of time of how safe the Tehri Dam was. And two schools of thought. One was the Russian, who said, go ahead and do it, no problems.
Okay.
And the other was the anti-dam protests, who said, who also came up with their own geological evidence, their own environmental evidence, that this should not happen. Because this is sitting across two major fault lines, and an earthquake of 6 or above may crack the whole thing.
Right.
And that is the doomsday scenario I have said, because, and again, this is authentic. This data is authentic. It is in the public domain. Now, there are several dams which are risky. To my mind, what I have seen is that they are not that well protected.
Okay.
So they're improving, but most dams are not. Most dams inside the country, I mean, Hirakud or something.
Is the Tehri Dam built to take on seismic shocks?
Up to 6. So it goes 6.5, 6.2 even. There is a risk.
Okay.
The government considers it an acceptable risk.
Okay.
Some people don't. And it's a scenario that you don't even want to experiment with, because the damage would be so immense that it doesn't bear thinking about.
Okay, so far we've discussed what the Tehri Dam, what the not building of the dam would have meant. Now let's discuss what the building of the dam now means to people. What has it given to them?
It has certainly given a lot of benefits. It has created more agriculture. The electricity is without the same. And there have been, because of the electricity, there has been industrialization in the lower riparian regions. All these things are there. But if you balance it against the social costs, the cultural costs, you see, at the end of the day, you have destroyed a way of life in a way that you think will do you good. And do we have the right to play God? You see? And if you give an organization the right to play God, it will play God. The biggest example being the Delhi Development Authority. You know, when the DDA Act was first framed, there was a clause, clause 9, if I recall correctly. Only recently they have amended it. It said the DDA is authorized to do anything that it considers good for the welfare of Delhi, in so many words. If you look at the 1961 Act, or 64 Act, whatever. And what did the Delhi Development Authority do? Drew up a master plan, had a green verge around Delhi, and what was the first building to come up on the green verge? The DDA Tower. So if you say in parts of Rohini, they said they sold their flats without water and sewerage connection. And when the people went there to their allotted flats, they found there was no water connection, no sewage connection. Went to the court, and the DDA said, we were supposed to provide shelter. We have provided shelter. What more do you want? So if you allow organizations to play God, they will play God. You allowed the Tehri Dam authorities. We allowed the other agencies concerned, including the irrigation department of the government of UP, to decide that moving them to Dehradun would be a good move. It will give them employment, etc., more money in their hand. What have they done? They have created replicas of their own villages.
Yes. THDC. Tehri Dam. Yeah. They made small colonies, yeah.
These colonies are just replicas of their own villages.
Yes.
Isn't it? They're trying desperately to keep
rebuild that life.
Their way of life, which they cannot.
Yeah.
Because once they're exposed to the rest of the thing, the way of life disappears. And if you tell me that it is not worth anything, then it is not worth anything to keep the Aboriginal way of life alive, or the Maori way of life alive, or the African tribes' way of life alive. Well, this is not on.
These are critical decisions, Mr. Chakravarty, and there has to be constant dialogue and engagement between what development can do for people and what their own social and cultural lives mean to them.
And the people.
So how does one arrive at a balance or the optimum mean then?
The optimum means comes from dialogue and negotiations. You have to spend, instead of spending like Tehri Dam, instead of spending 60 years trying to solve technical problems. If you had spent 1/10 of that on talking to the people, asking what they want. When Kosepur Dam was being built, I had to get called in so many times because of the blasts that they did. The topsoil flowed into the river, and in the hills the topsoil is hardly 8 inches, 10 inches, and if it flows into the river, what remains? Nothing.
The mountains are denuded.
Yes. But their fields are gone. That is more important. Their their agricultural way of life is gone. So these things could have been seen. It is not that. There was no knowledge of sociology or social anthropology or things like that in India in the 1960s. There was, and quite a lot of it. How was it used? Wasn't. But today they can use, and today also they are not using. You see, for example, there are these organizations like, political organizations or the RSS or whatever. We have thousands and thousands and hundreds of thousands of people spread all over the country, in villages. Why don't you use them as sources of information? These are the people who may belong to your organization, but they come from a certain social strata, certain communities. Use them to build up an information base instead of just building on gender and this. Of course you should build on gender, I'm not decrying that. But again, instead of labeling them, putting them in categories, this gender, this age group, that age group, that does not define a culture.
That's true.
And it is the cultural fabric that we are destroying. And it's not only in India. It's not only in India. It's everywhere, all over the world. But if India has to get ahead, then we need to understand the way of life that comes. You see, like he said, there were floods and everything when a certain deity's temple was moved.
Yeah.
Probably the temple was sited where there was a knowledge base that this area is weak, and if you have jungles around it and they say the deity will get angry, then something will happen.
Yeah.
So when deity's temple was moved, it happened.
True.
Somebody would have understood. You cannot say, and I said I learned it from the people, that you see, a farmer knows when it's going to rain, when it's not going to rain. Knows when a big wind is coming, when a big wind is not coming. It's knowledge that has come down to him over the centuries. Just because you have got an electronic weather surveillance system, don't decry that knowledge which comes from the soil. Counter-check it. Because his life has been woven around his own predictions without the benefit of the weather satellite for all these hundreds of years.
This is the knowledge that he's been born with, he's lived in the middle of.
Exactly.
Very, very well said.
Thank you.
I think this is good. What you said right now, we should end the interview with this. This is very, very good. Because, this is very important for people to understand what you just said. That there has to be development, but there has to be a constant dialogue with the people. And their knowledge also has to be considered as valid knowledge. You cannot dismiss them.
No.
And you cannot take decisions for them all the time. Their participation and their, consent in whatever happens in their region is also important.
Absolutely.
And their views.
Absolutely. You see, I'll give you another example. In Calcutta, very early, I think, early 20th century, there was the Calcutta Improvement Trust. And in the Improvement Trust Act, it was written that nothing will be done without considering the views of the local people. It is still written, the CIT Act is still there, that they have to be consulted, every part of the development has to be negotiated with them. Do it. Then came the CMDA Act, the Calcutta Metropolitan Development Act, which was a copy of the DDA Act, which, as I have told you. What is the result? The Calcutta Improvement Trust built a road known as the CIT road. Okay, people were moved out to broaden the road, etc., etc. Not a single protest, not a single court case. Because they had all consented. And every time the CMDA tried to do something, bang went the thing.
Okay.
And these people, the so-called development people, and the World Bank contributed to it. There is a area called Kosepur in Calcutta. If you've been there,
I've heard about it.
there is a gun factory there, Kosepur gun factory. The CMDA decided that these people don't have sanitary toilets, so let us give them sanitary toilets. Fine. They built septic tanks in every block, blah, blah, blah. Completely forgetting that the bloody septic tanks have to be cleared. And you have to have machines. There were no machines. So all the people who earlier used to carry night soil on their heads, it's a horrible occupation, and they had been thrown out of jobs, had to be called back. And the funny part is, I was there when the negotiation was happening with those people. Their union head came, and I was sitting there with the Commissioner of Calcutta Corporation and officers. So they said, "Whoa, we are giving you your jobs back," and so on and so forth, at enhanced rates, etc., etc., etc. The union people said, "Sir, we have to consult with our own people." Okay, go ahead, come back in 1 hour. They came back in 1 hour and said, "It can't be done. You can't rejoin." So the commissioner was surprised, said, "Why?" He said, "It doesn't fit in with our job description." "Oh, job description? To carry night soil? No, you don't understand. Job description says fresh night soil. It doesn't say, it does not say rotten night soil." You got it? You take it out of the septic tank. So this is comes by not being far-sighted, not understanding, etc., etc.
Not understanding contexts.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I will have my last word.
Yes, please.
In this book, you will find a lesson that one of the protagonists, Shivarma, learns, which is minimize the risk of maximum loss.
Okay.
Always. And this is where your earlier question of balancing between the needs of development, you have to see what your maximum loss will be.
Okay.
Is your maximum loss the loss of your culture, the loss of your history, the loss of your civilization values? Is that the loss? If that is your loss, then minimize the risk of it. Do what you want, but apply the Occam's razor.
Okay. And this has been a fabulous conversation, Mr. Chakravarty. Thank you for being with us. You took us on a journey from the Silk Road. We walked with the Vikings, we spoke with the Buddhist lamas, then we talked about development and Uttarakhand and very important issues in that. And also how it is important to be in constant conversation with the people, the culture, context, and not label and bracket them. Thank you for being with us.